bringing you the absolute best stories across the ag industry. You're now tuning into How I Built This Ag Business, an original series by AgSwag.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of How I Built This Ag Business. Today we got the Wyffels family on. We got Bill Wyffels, Bob Wyffels, John Wyffels, who is the president of Wyffels Seed. We also got Jacob Wyffels on, the vice president of production. A little bit about the company. They started all the way back in 1946 on a 160-acre farm in Henry County, Illinois by Bill Wyffels Sr. Now they're in 5 states and have over 200 employees. And a lot of people consider them the fastest growing seed corn company in the Corn Belt. So with that, I'd like to welcome you guys all to the show. So appreciate you guys doing it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I guess we'll start with Bill and Bob. I guess how did your guys' dad started the business? I guess how did this whole thing get started? And I guess how'd you guys end up with that farm? And I guess we'll start there with that story. So.
My parents, my father was a very curious character, came from a pretty large family, lived in Henry County, Illinois, close to communities of Atkinson, Geneseo, and that general vicinity. Dad was married in the early 1940s and had 7 children, 5 girls and 2 boys. Bob and I, the business was more of a farming operation in those early years. Dad acquired 160 acres of farm. Previous to that, he was farming with 2 brothers, and they both bought small farms at the time that were maybe larger than 160 acres. But if you go back to that time, there's a lot of diversified agriculture where people were raising cattle, hogs, and then different types of small grains and row crops. Dad had an 8th grade education. Mom had a high school graduate and very, very sharp lady. This happened in kind of an accident sort of way. I guess I would say there was other seed companies in the general vicinity. C.D. Ford and Sons, who's still in business, but they were in the hybrid corn and small grain business at one time. They're more of a distributor now of different types of agricultural products. Wyffels Hybrids was located in Geneseo, as well as Siebens. And so if you go back to that era, there was just a ton of seed businesses that sprung up. Dad was curious about seed, as well as all kinds of different, this is post-war. So at that period of time, I've got the family has invoices of purchases from those years of 1940 all the way to until he died. And so we can see what he purchased. And so it was like a full line of farm equipment for 4-row farming. And so, a lot of changes going on. I'm trying to paint the picture here. And livestock, a lot of the livestock was walked off the farm. And so fertilizers were becoming popular. Dad was just an experimenter, very curious, trying different types of things. Hooked up with a county extension agent who had access to different land grant colleges for different types of seeds and fertility items. And Dad was more or less the guy that was more than willing to demonstrate and try things. And so that was the beginning of the seed business in the early 40s there, where he experimented with some oat varieties in small strips. So these small strips, maybe a dozen to 20 some different varieties at the time, coming from land grant colleges from Wisconsin to Minnesota, Iowa State, Purdue, Illinois, that would be planted on the farm at the courtesy of this extension agent. Darrell Fike was his name. But Dad and him became really quite the team. And so I'll try to, old guys talk a long time sometimes. So he planted these strips of oats, and one year one really stood out and decided to plant it on an acreage because oats were planted for nurse crops because hogs were raised outside back in those days. And this variety on possibly 20 acres just stood like a string during a July windstorm, and heavy rain in our farm was close to a local highway, and farmers would drive by in that field of stand when everybody else was flat as pancake, and vehicles pulled in that day and said, "I don't know what that is, but do you want to sell some?" So that began a case of a clipper cleaner being slipped into a driveway of a very large corn crib. We had a platform Fairbanks scale out front of a cattle feedlot, and voila, he started producing certified seed. I'm going to take a breath there because Brother Bob ought to have something to say about this.
The production of seed oats is really what put the company on the map to begin with, because you can imagine, there wasn't any cell phones and computers back then. And these oat variety plots that were held on an annual basis brought in farmers from, 70 or 80 farmers from, a 100-mile area, if you will, that were interested in oats. And there were professors from the University of Illinois, or some agronomists that would come, or oat breeders that would come, and there would be a twilight demonstration held. These professors, which were extension agents, would come into the family farm. We'd have dinner with them. Imagine six kids and everybody gather around the table, and we would have a luncheon and pie, and then head out to the fields. And so the farmers would come into the area, and that went on for 25 years of producing seed oats for people in the area. And all this was done at the kitchen table. So probably spending 10 minutes too long on this part, but that is what built the character, the reputation, the service mindedness, the quality assurance, the billing, invoicing, getting to know customers on a first name basis, finding out how they wanted their oats. You wanted it in 2 bushel bags, you wanted it in a gravity box, you want it in a truck. So these oats that all the family would help clean were then eventually, distributed to those farmers. Many of them would come into the farmstead at the time. So, that was probably crystallized a lot of things that I believe carry on in another generation today, is that great customer service that we learned at the kitchen table anyway. Maybe we'll take a breath there.
Yeah. I like the fact that, like you guys said, that the business wasn't started originally as a big money making, type of idea or thought, and it was just out of that you had solved a problem that people were having, and your dad was experimental and found something that was working, and other people wanted to have the chance to be a part of that. So many people today, I think, a lot of these younger kids, they all start with money first, and hey, how can we make money, and we want to go start this business. And boy, I don't know, we've invested in a lot of those, I know that, through the last few years, and it never seems to quite play out like something like you guys had found here. So yeah, that's interesting. That's a great story. So he didn't just start the seed business to go after and make a bunch of money. He kind of just experimented with his own stuff. So yeah, great thing there.
So when did you, Bob and Bill, when did you guys start getting involved in the business? Are you guys involved like when you were in high school, or did you go to college or come back after college? How'd all that work out?
Child labor forever. It was a farm. We were 3 miles from any civilization that had any community to it. And so, we started working, during summers and things like that, pulling weeds out of oat fields, eventually detasseling corn. Used to make this joke that the reason my one sister died at birth, but there were 6 kids, and made this joke that the dad had 6 kids so he could have a full set on the detasseling machine. I came back from college. I was 1 year into college in 1970. Dad began to have some illness issues, and I then came back to start to work for him. We were farming 480 acres at the time, selling close to 2,000 bags of seed corn and maybe 4,000 or 5,000 bags of seed oats, grazing hogs and cattle and row crops. It was myself and eventually a hired man at that time. And then I went back to junior college a little bit, but never did get a degree.
Same as Bill, you know, you worked on the farm with the hogs, cattle, the whole operation. And after high school, went to University of Illinois, got a degree in crop sciences agronomy. But unfortunately, when I was in 1974, I was a sophomore, and that is the year that our father passed. And so there was a big change that occurred then in transition that went on. But my degree is in crop science agronomy, and have liked working in the production, supply management, quality assurance aspect of the business.
So who else was working in the company at the time when your dad passed? Was it just kind of the family hired guy, you said?
We hired a man we normally had one other person that would help with row crop or other types of things that would go on the farm. It was an hourly position, but other than that, it was more of a, you know, we were more of a grain operation than we were a seed business in those days.
So when did the seed business really take off? Do you guys get together and like, hey, let's really make this happen? Or I guess how'd that all play out?
Great question. The year before Dad died, we had put together, Dad had a hybrid, you know, that known as W26. It did extremely well in some small tests at home. But in 1974, you know, not having a sales organization of any kind, it was all word of mouth. We entered that hybrid in another hybrid in some county extension plots. There used to be a lot of counties would have an extension test plot of anywhere from 20 to 30 corn hybrids and 2 entries per brand. And so we entered this in Joe Davies, Stevenson, Carroll, and Whiteside County. In that year, that hybrid was the top yielding hybrid out of 50 hybrids in every location. That is crazy. That was a motivator, inspirational. So, you know, during the spring of 74, when Dad was still living, you know, how much of this stuff do we produce? Because somebody's going to want to plant that. And excuse me, that was 74. So he, you know, he died during that. He saw the results, but you know, you said when did it take off? You know, we had kind of a winter meeting with the family in December of 74, and you know, Bob and I had aspirations to that we thought that there was a possibility to make something out of this someday. And a brother-in-law joined us, and he was going to be the sales lead. You know, he was a much more outgoing character. Didn't have much experience with agriculture, but he began to build the distribution system where we started Farmer Dealers. His name was George Ralph, married my sister. I'm sorry, Bob, I'm maybe talking too much here, but he and the rest of us recruited 13 people, farmers, to represent the brand between 74 and the summer of 75, and had our first kickoff meeting in the summer of 75 right in the backyard of where we all grew up at. And from that, we doubled the seed business from 2,000 to 4,000 bags that year. Now I'm going to let Bob take over. He can tell some of this.
Well, one thing back on 74 in the spring, there was a late spring frost, froze off corn. That doesn't happen very often, but we plant seed. So the seed crop in 74 got planted late. Then we had an early freeze in September. And so freeze will, you know, kill the embryo of seed corn. So it killed about half of our production. So while we were attempting to grow that large quantity, we had 3 major setbacks, and our father passed away. So those 3 things happened were quite challenging. And, you know, it's adversity. There was plenty of it, but that was at the beginning of really the seed corn growth after that terrific production or the performance of W26. So as Bill mentioned, though farmers would call from all over. We sold out after I think it was about 7 years of consistent growth of doubling each year, from 2,000 to 4,000 to 8,000 to 16,000. So that performance led to so much, and the hybrid was good, but led to so much demand and PR and word of mouth that that's what really drove that initial business. That was pretty incredible time then.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good one there. Faced some adversity right out of the gates. Some people may have quit, and you guys kept plowing through it and built your sales team. I like the sales team with you kept it mostly in the family, and then you had the 13 farmer dealer operators, and just grew it from there, huh?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I would say quality customer service and a good product, and that's the right recipe for certain.
Basically, at that time also, at Dad's passing, we sold all the assets of the livestock business off in order to finance the capital intensive nature of the seed business. So we transitioned even at that time from a kind of a livestock operation over to strictly seed corn, where we thought we had something going, and we pushed a lot behind it anyway.
Yeah. When you guys first started out, were you mostly focused on the science side, providing the best hybrids, or were you more focused on, the distribution, great customer service and things like that? Or was it just a combination?
That's a good question too. And again, some of this family heritage, some about what our father had put into us was the fact that you wanted to serve farmers. It's still our mission today, produce a more productive and profitable crop. So that mission that he started with still holds true today as our purpose at the company. But in the seed corn business, there's a lot of different hybrids that you can grow, and ones that would produce a lot in a seed field, but maybe would be 5 or 10 bushels behind in a commercial setting. And we were constantly looking for hybrids that would yield the top end, highest yield with good stalk and roots. But it was always about a premium product, premium from the standpoint of the highest yielding. And there was a lot of compromises then that had to be made in the actual production of that crop. Those inbreds may only yield 30 or 40 bushels to the acre. And that was the challenge then in producing those. But, the farmer has to have the best product.
Yeah, that gives them the best ROI, I guess, and the best profitability in return. So
Right.
Have you seen that change much through the years from new customers? You younger guys now that are involved, have you seen the younger customer want something different, or are they, they want, or has it pretty much stayed the same? Any of you guys on the
Kevin, my opinion is that at the end of the day, it starts with yield and product performance. I mean, it's table stakes for farmer operations. And so I don't think that's changed. I don't think that ever changes. The relationship piece, though, is, incredibly important as well. And so that's probably the place where we differentiate more than anything.
There's been some thoughts, especially over the last decade, as online purchases continue to take place in other industries and in retail. Is that something that may supplant in the seed industry or other ag inputs? And there's certainly other ag inputs that have had that happen, but it's interesting. It's an emotional decision. It's one of the biggest decisions a farmer can make in a year, is to figure out what seed they want to plant to help provide their livelihood for their business and their family. So we've, like John mentioned, the service and the relationship aspect are key cornerstones to us. We think that's still extremely important as we look out the front windshield.
I think the other two things I'd add real quick are that, seed is your moneymaker, right? When you think about all the input decisions you're going to make, that is where you make your money. And inevitably, something is going to go wrong over time, right? And so I think, one of the other things we believe in firmly is that something will go wrong at some point. And so that's why we have a team that's in the field to have relationships with people and service them, so that when something goes wrong, they know that we're their partner and we've got their back.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
How, John and Jacob, how was it growing up in the family biz? I guess you guys were little when this thing was really taking off. How crazy were things at the house, and were you guys pretty involved when you were kids? Or
I think, Jacob and I probably both have, unique stories there. I guess a couple of things I would share, Jordan, is that you're absolutely right. We grew up in the business. My father, very passionate about people and relationships. And so I just remember a lot of conversations at the dinner table being about people, building the team, right? And I guess the other thing I would say is there's 5 family members in the 3rd generation, and every single one of us started working for the company as teenagers. So I think it's fantastic that, everybody's got, hands-on experience, whether it was in research, whether it was in seed production, the warehouse, of, what it takes to be successful in this business, what our employees do day in and day out. And so that's a great foundational experience for anybody that's going to be a future owner.
Yeah, I would, really similar to John. We all grew up in the business, spent a lot of time summers in our research nursery, whether it's doing hand pollinations or at our production facility. And I think many of us probably detasseled and we're like, hey, we're going to go to college and see if we can't do something different. And after spending a lot of hours out detasseling, a few of us wandered back and still do it to today. But that was just part of growing up, was being around the seed business and hearing at the kitchen table a bit how things were going. Around the kitchen table was a lot of, like John mentioned, relationships, customer service, and quality. And even the 2 individuals that are in 3rd generation that aren't in the business today, I still think in their daily lives, they in the businesses they're in, they think about putting the customer first, and the quality aspect too.
what's one of the best lessons? What's like one of the best lessons you learned when you were a kid from your dads growing up, like just being around the business? Me and my dad were talking the other day, and he brought up a good one. He always used to say, but you don't have time to do it right the first time, you don't have time to do it at all. So that was one he always used to say to me when we were in the business. He's like, see, son, you got to do it right the first time. So what's like one of the lessons you always are reminded of and still take in today, just being around the business?
I think it's the customer first mindset. I think that was drilled into our heads at a pretty young age. It's we're without the customer, we don't have a business. So you got to do what's right for the customer. If you make a mistake, own up to it, deal with it. John mentioned it. In agriculture, you're going to have issues. They may be your fault, they may not be, but standing behind the product and doing what's right on behalf of our customers. That was probably the one that I really took away.
I think one for me, Jordan, would be just the lesson of perseverance. You guys talked about as we started the call, this brand has been on a pretty exciting run over the last 9 years. We've grown the business each one of those years. But if you look back across 76 years, we haven't grown the business every year. And that's just a really hard thing to do, to grow the business. And so when you don't, how do you gather yourself? How do you collect yourself and really fight through some tough, challenging times, right? I mean, we're also in the seed business where everything we do is impacted by the environment. Mother Nature has a huge impact on our ability to be successful, right? And so, I think a lot of folks that come to work for Wyffels don't do it because it's easy. I think they do it because they enjoy a little bit of hard. They enjoy adversity, right? That's a bit of the I guess the DNA that we look for when we're hiring people, that they're up for a challenge. And so I guess that's just one lesson that I got from an early age.
How was the transition, like, I guess now, between Bill and Bob? how was that? How'd that all transpire? How did they kind of, from what it seems outside looking in, Bill and Bob are kind of not as involved in the business, and you and Jacob were kind of at the helm, taking the bull by the horn. So I guess how did that transition work, and I guess how did that all play out, or what were some of the difficult things that you guys had to overcome? And I guess you guys still probably deal with it today with Bill and Bob getting in there, probably just getting bored. I guess Bill and Bob can start on, I guess, when you guys decided, like, hey, when this is it, it's time for John and Jacob to take over.
Well, we let all our kids, both sides, know that if they wanted to come back to the business someday, they could, and none of them had to. And so there were probably a few years there where we were wondering, will they want to join what we're doing? And so one by one, three of them have come back, the two on here, plus Blake, who is John's brother, who's works in research as a technician. And so we made way for them, but we have a kind of a family constitution that we have put together over time. And many years back, let our children know what the business was about, tried to include them on what's happening, kind of board of directors meetings, if you will. They weren't, but they were in that manner, and made sure they knew they had an opportunity if they wished to. But it also was very important that they had to join, just like any other employee, that they had to make their way through. They had to grow through the organization. Not everybody is equal. You can do what you want. If you aspire, whatever you aspire to or have the passion to, you can do, whether it's here or somewhere else. And it still goes today. But we're happy, that three are back in the fold. I won't call it the fold, that have chosen to join what we're doing. And yeah, Bill, you want to add anything to that, or?
I think the transitions really went well. That's my perspective. I think all of the next generation were prepared well in advance. They were respected by other employees in the company. I got some real strong advice from a legal representative that we work with that basically said, you got to leave. You got to get out of there. If you really want people to know that you're not the president of the company any longer. And so, as hard as that was to hear, I did. And in my personal opinion, that has really been, I really made a smart move there. I did get out. I'm not involved in any operations. It's kind of a joke, but I'm not involved in any operations, haven't been since late 2017. I'm on the board of directors of the company, but otherwise, I will attend meetings occasionally, and I'm proud of the next generation that is operating the business today, and the employees, the leadership that we have. They are an incredible team. They're doing great things.
I guess John and Jacob, what was it like working your way up the company and then finally coming in the positions you are today? And if you want to share a little bit about what you guys do day to day, that'd be cool too. So.
Sure. So Jordan, I'll start and just say that, I don't think my mother ever appreciates me sharing this, but at least it's my memory. About the time I was going off to school, she and I had a very short chat, but basically said, when you graduate from college, it's not likely there's going to be a job for you with the family business. And, at the time, I think I kind of asked myself the question, what the hell did I do to deserve that? But honestly, I think at some point I realized that was kind of liberating, because you asked the question earlier, what's it like growing up in the business? In Geneseo, there's a lot of folks that are familiar with Wyffels Hybrids. They know that you're part of the family, and so there's kind of an expectation that at some point you're going to work for the business, right? And so she kind of gave me that freedom to go do my own thing, which I studied finance, got a degree in accounting, and I was frankly away from home for about 10 years, getting outside experience. And then about 2013, we had a family business leader for the finance group that he'd been with the company for 33 years. He was retiring. And so, the family very generously offered me, invited me at that point to come talk about that job. So it was Blake and Jacob had already joined the company at that point. So I was, very, very excited, encouraged to come back and work alongside them. And it was just very welcoming to have the family support to say, hey, come back and consider this. And so about 2017, my dad made it clear that he was going to step back. And so we had a lot of conversations, quite honestly, over what was the right decision. I guess I just felt very encouraged. Again, the family gave me the confidence to say, hey, we want you to go do this thing. I wanted the best person to have that job to lead the business forward, right? And so hearing from them that confidence, made me feel good about taking that responsibility on. And so the last 5 years, it's been an awesome run. And I'm, you asked about what we do day to day. I guess I'll just tell you that I do a lot of things, as you might expect, with about 200 employees wearing many different hats. I spend time in the field with our sales team and our customers when I can. But I certainly spend a lot of time, thinking about the future of the business, where we're going. And my favorite thing to do is build this team. I quite honestly believe we have the most passionate, service-minded group in ag. And it's incredibly inspiring to get to continue to build that.
So did you come on first, Jacob? You came on first.
I was right behind Blake and joining. We were a year apart in school. We actually were in at University of Illinois together. We both studied crop science, and we're in HER. So Blake graduated and came back to the business. And then when I finished up, I wanted to join immediately as well. I always had a passion for the production side, doing work with my hands, kind of that mix of office and out in the field. So I took an entry-level role, what we call a production technician. So for that, you kind of follow the crop and product through the whole cycle. So out in the field, working with growers that we're contracting with to produce our seed, managing detasseling crews, running first, second shift in our dryers, husk and sort operations. And then, we transition into what we call conditioning seed, which is cleaning, sizing, packaging it. And so, worked anywhere from first to third shift in the conditioning tower, and then into distribution as kind of a logistics there. So it was really good experience for me. I got to learn all of the different jobs on the production side of the business, and probably more importantly, learn about the people and what really made people tick. So over the years, I took on additional responsibility. That was really good kind of grounding for me to understand all those different roles. So as we brought people on, kind of that mantra of wouldn't ask somebody to do something I haven't done myself to an extent. And so it was really good experience there, learning all those different jobs and being part of that team and kind of getting the confidence of the rest of the team. So as we fast forward, it's probably 2.5 years ago, Bob had been leading the production arena, which is our production operations, quality assurance, and supply management. And he was ready to make that transition. He wasn't going to lead the business quite yet, but he wanted to transition kind of those day-to-day operations of leading that group. So I took that over in 2019, 2020 timeframe. And we've added a lot of folks to that team over the last few years, invested a lot in our production capacity as we've grown. I lead a team of about 40 full-time folks, and then it's a pretty seasonal business. So we could have anywhere from 20 to 150 seasonal employees, and then 200 to 300 contractor migrant workers throughout the year too. So I spend most of my time in the production operations, the quality assurance group, and some folks on the supply management. And again, we've been growing, we've been investing, and you may have read we are expanding even into Iowa with some of our operations here in the Ames area. So that'll be another exciting project and endeavor that we're headed towards too.
Yeah, it seems like you guys have been just, I guess, like John said, since he took over the business, it seems like he said it's grown every year, and you guys have really expanded. I know you guys are putting that big plan in like Iowa. You said, I guess what's were like some of the big, did you guys make any big changes once you took over, John, and Bob and Bill took over, or just kind of more hungry and willing to grow the business, or what do you think some of the biggest changes were? Not trying to bash your dads or anything, but
this is a real easy one, Jordan. I had incredible timing. You know, in 2010, Bill, Bob, the rest of Wyffels leadership, I mean, they put some real intentional plans into place to really grow the business, to become much more relevant, to be on, thousands more farms than we were, and frankly, to make an investment, and take some risk, and go for it. And so, when you make those kinds of investments, those are long-term investments. Those don't pay off in 2010 or 2011 or even 2012. They started to pay off in 2014, frankly, for the first time, or at least see some of the fruits of the labor, right? So, a lot of great things were done well ahead of my arrival to the business. That's for sure.
were there any big changes you made once you took control, or I guess not control, but once Bob kind of stepped back, or Bill stepped back, I mean? No, just keep doing what you guys are doing, or?
That's an interesting question. Maybe others have perspective on that. I mean, quite honestly, when I stepped in, it was like, let's keep this going, right? We're on an incredible run. Let's continue to keep this up. So, I don't know that I would say that personally that there have been any major changes.
Yeah, some of the guys we talked to in the past, like they've kind of, once they got involved in the business, they've seen like different ways to create different types of revenue, or just certain things they've added to the business to grow it. I guess it's kind of more what I was asking. But
I think, maybe to your question, Jordan, maybe one thing I've tried to do, but I don't know that it's necessarily any different than what the leaders before me did, was just have a really clear plan on, who are we as a brand? What does Wyffels stand for? Where do we want to go? And how are we going to get there? So pretty basic questions. But I think one of the things that's quite frankly been helpful for our brand is really discipline, and, sticking to who we want to be. So, one of the things we haven't talked a lot about, but is very unique about our brand, is that, we're frankly the only brand of scale that doesn't have a soybean business. And so, there have been conversations over the years over, should we get in the soybean business, right? I mean, that would be one very clear way to grow the business very quickly, right? But one of the questions I challenge myself and others with at times is, so if we go do that, how's that going to make our business better? All right. And so, to this point, we haven't gotten in the soybean business. And, I don't know that it's a question, as long as we're selling corn and most of our customers plant soybeans as well. I don't know that it's a question that'll ever go away. But our brand is absolutely differentiated today because of that decision. And I think we can probably, or I know we provide a different experience at the grower's gate based on that focus, expertise, knowledge on seed corn production.
Hey, Jordan, I'll add, I was in a meeting one time with the really high Walt Disney exec, and this was after Walt Disney had passed away. And they had said that Disney went through a period where it almost went broke and bankrupt after that Disney had passed away. But the executive team had plastered all over the walls, what would Walt do? What would Walt do? And they said it was the worst. That was the worst thing that they could ever have done. And they had some consultants come in and said, yeah, you got to get all that off the walls, because what they said Walt Disney was really good at, what I hear you guys saying, was your guys, Bill and Bob's father. I mean, he was experimental. He would roll with the punches. He would try new things, try different things, try change. And they said Walt Disney was really good at changing, but they didn't have it that way in their minds. You know, it was like, what would Walt do when we last had him here, you know, before he passed away? And they tried to stay with that for a long, long time. And it almost just, you know, crippled Walt Disney. But once they got rid of that mindset and really thought about what Walt Disney did and what he was really good at, was he was good at changing, you know, and rolling with the punches and changing and being experimental. And like you said, John, some of the things they put in place for growth and before you got there, and some of the things that their father did to start things off. So, you know, yeah, it's interesting. You know, you as you pass the business along, you know, I wonder though, and like I hear Jordan often reference, you know, probably what would my dad do? What? It's just tough, you know. You got to remember, you know, some of the most important things were things we didn't really even recognize, was the ability to change and roll with the punches, like I'm assuming, and the transparency that Bill and Bob have allowed you guys some rope, you know, to do your things, and the transparency they brought to the table to show you the business and how things can play out. So yeah, all good stuff.
Yeah, what are I guess I wanted to touch on a few things. What's like one of the like best, I sent some questions over. What's like one of the best stories you guys have that maybe some people don't know, like as a family building the business together?
Yeah, that could
maybe some big blow ups. I don't know. Whatever you guys want to share. I'm sure there's been some doozies. Me and my dad go at it all the time. So
I don't know whether this applies or not, but through time, there's just turning points in a sense, and you know, the PIC program was a turning point. The high interest rates and depression of agriculture in the late 80s. Go out and make a loan for 18.5% interest, and let me know how that feels. Fighting through that, you know, freezes that maybe took a third of your crop, that causes you some significant pain. And so, you know, through the 7 years that you know, Bob and I experienced, there was just things that I think the team today is a lot smarter because of some of the crazy things that we went through, that you know, to overcome some of those things. It takes time, you know, and dealing with the pain that's associated with that. We made it through them, but we have a lot of things to be thankful for where the business is today. The gratitude of the employees, the farmers that have supported us for years and referenced us to other farmers. It's been a lot of fun, you know. It went awfully fast. The change in agriculture from, you know, the day that I started, where the average yield in the United States was 75 bushels to the acre in 1970, if you can imagine that. And today, what is it, 172, the national corn average? That's a lot of change. I'm going to give more credit to that, to genetics, than I am to fertilizer. But seed has made a huge difference in production of agriculture.
Jordan, I like what Bill's saying is, in my world, in the trading world, we'd hire people, you know, we'd always say, hell, a monkey or any dummy can handle manage a winning position. You know, you can manage a winning position. That's not what makes a great trader or a great investor. It's how you handle your losing hands. And when you're dealt some losing cards, it's how you play that hand that matters most in our world. And I think Bill's saying the same thing, you know, when the cards, you know, when you're constantly dealt and reshuffled and get a new hand of cards, and some of those bad hands, it sounds like, you guys played those fairly well and came out on the other side in good shape compared to some of the others. So yeah, I mean, I think that's in the longevity of a business and over the long haul, like they're talking about, there's just not very many businesses that make it 3 generations. Let's be realistic. I mean, it's a small fraction, and you certainly you got to play the losing hands well, and you can't let those whip you and beat you. And I think that's just crazily important. So yeah, that's a great point, but
Was there anything like along the way that I guess what was like one idea you guys had along the way that didn't quite go as planned? Was there anything like you guys sat down and you're like, this is it, like we got a good idea here, and you went out and just didn't work out at all?
like our farming in South America,
Yeah, like that.
some of those things. Oh boy. Yeah, I hear you.
I can't think of just one idea, but what we have done over time or over years have become much more intentional about the people that we hire. Back in those 70s and 80s, nobody knew how to pronounce our name, and so it was challenging to hire people at that time as we were growing. And you would hire because someone was available in the early days, in the 80s. And so your hiring success ratio, maybe it was half at that time. And over time, when, it was decisions that had to be made with people, you would improve your ability to hire people and what strategy and what culture that you wanted in the business. So I would say today we're much more intentional and have a number of teams that work when we do have an opening in the business. So that hiring process is one that I would say that we've improved.
Yeah, that's a tough one there. I mean, that's tough for us. I know that. I like your analogy though. You were just, you were hiring people that, that needed a job and were looking for something, and now you're more selective and picking people, I guess, for the position you want them to play, and doing all the due diligence on that side of it with the HR. Yeah, that's tough for us. I know that we've struggled at especially it feels like some of the younger kids. I don't want to pick on younger kids, but it just seems like the work ethic's a little different than we were accustomed to, and feelings get hurt a lot more easy on the constructive criticism, I like to say, and it's a challenge. So I told Jordan, I'm like, we were talking last night. We need to hire someone that can, I think, communicate better maybe with some of the younger kids and not, I don't know, maybe not hurt their feelings as much or something like that, because you can't say a whole lot. And I don't know, maybe it's the way they're raised. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure, guys. I don't know. It's different. So it feels different. Don't you guys think? Maybe you can't say anything, but hey, I hear what you're saying. So
it's a different generation.
Yeah.
You can the work-life balance is something we've stressed over time, where we've got a wide range of folks. I can think on my team that range from joining in the last couple of months to somebody who's been here for 42 years. And so the way that they look at the business and operate and think is completely different. And communication, we're still a face-to-face organization. So I think a lot of the communication we strive to have, face-to-face and deal with issues one-on-one. But we've had to work at staffing and adjusting our roles and shifts differently, because people aren't looking to work 10 hours, 12 hours a day and wear a badge of honor of 80-hour weeks. And that's fine. We just are transitioning how we operate and think about how we staff those areas. And it all revolves around a different work-life balance. I think that different generations look at that differently.
How's your guys' work-life balance? As I continue to hear this from my family, on our end, Jordan's getting married coming up. His fiance is like, my goodness, all you guys do is talk business when you're around. You guys work all the time, and it's like, Well, yeah, that's kind of what we do. I mean, I don't know. Her family is more, you know, they've had jobs and work for people, and you know, it's just different. I think they shut it off at 5 o'clock, and things are, you know, just different, I guess. So how do you guys go about it when you get together and all that? I mean, I'm sure you guys are talking some work. Yeah. Anybody want that? John, Jacob?
Go ahead, Bill.
No. Go ahead.
I think we've learned probably from our parents on that balance, and I think they've shared where they've struggled over their careers at times, and we've got young fourth generation for a couple of the folks in the third generation, and I've got one on the way, so that's a change of pace too. That I probably get more questions from my wife on what are you doing at work, because I try to shut it off completely at times. So I get pestered. Well, why aren't you telling me more?
Yeah, I hear you. So it's definitely a tough one. I hear that from lots of families. So it's hard balancing it. Bill, Bob, how'd you guys do it?
I was horrible.
Yeah.
Not enough time taken off. John and his siblings are better at it, and that's great because I think when you're away from work, you just you get a fresher look. You get a chance to think, and you always come back with better things in your mind, even if it's like going to a conference like you folks have coming up. You know, you're going to come back with something, and those things are important to do. And so, yeah, I do believe it's important. It's a critically important thing.
Yeah, I would agree. I remember when I used to rarely would take a vacation, people in the office would be like, oh gosh, he's taking a vacation. This is good and bad. Good that he's leaving, bad because he's going to come back with 1,000 new ideas and things that we got to work on. So it's like a double-edged sword, you know.
Those conferences get dangerous for him. We'll have 6 different businesses started in a week.
we might. Oh boy, I hear you. So yeah, it's just that work-life balance thing. I think it's always been for my wife and I. We've been married, you know, high school sweethearts, stayed married the whole time, and I don't know, just delegated out duties, and she's done a lot. You know, obviously I should have done more, like Bill's saying, you know, probably should have been home more, done more, looking back at things. And, you know, I think it's good that the younger kids, like he's saying, you know, go do other things, get better perspectives, go on trips, travel a little bit, go to conferences. So, yeah, I'm definitely seeing the light a little bit on that front. So, I think it's never going to end. There's going to be a constant trying to always improve on that end. So, yeah, Jordan.
Yeah, is there probably try to wrap this thing up? Is there anything we haven't talked about you guys wanted to talk about, or
Yeah, anything we've missed?
any questions for us, or
Where's Wyffels? Where do you see him, John? When you pass the reins, you and Jacob, to the next generation, where do you see this thing? I think you're on mute.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
You know, it's a fun one to think about, right? Because to a degree would hope that, you know, maybe there's another 20 years left to continue to grow and build this thing. So, you know, one thing we said here probably close to 4 years ago was that, you know, we wanted to be one of the top 3 brands in the Central Corn Belt and be over 1 million units. You know, there's only 2 other brands in the Central Corn Belt today that have 1 million units of corn. And so we're approaching that. And quite honestly, it's one of the things that, you know, right now, we're thinking a lot about our future and where do we want to grow to. So I have no questions that, you know, ongoing growth is going to continue to be part of that formula. But I think one other thing that strikes me is just, again, when I started in this business in 2013, walking into a business that was really well built. And so that's something I think about a lot is, is building a business that lasts. Because I think any one of us in the third generation, we think about this as a fourth generation business someday. One of the better things I think I've heard in 2022 is this concept of the 50-50 rule, which I'll butcher it, but something to the effect of, 50% of your contributions are based on what you do in your role today, and 50% of your contributions are what happens after you leave. So I think our father and uncle, lived that to a T, and it's something that I carry on my shoulders and think about a lot as we go forward.
Do you guys take revenue or profits and diversify into other businesses or other ag businesses, or do you try to take the majority of that and put it back directly into the Wyffels model itself, the corn seed model?
Yeah, based on the way this business is growing, every single last dollar of it is going into seed production capacity, capabilities. It's going into people. It's going into new technologies, better corn products, better corn hybrids for a year from now. So I think it's probably a function of how much we're growing. Whatever's left, you're right. It's going right back into the business, seed business.
Yeah, see, like ours. So through the Van Trump report and through our trading and my investing, I mean, the revenue that we have come in through all of these through that model, we take and reallocate it and invest it into other businesses. And so, I mean, there's multiple ways people can do things, but yeah, I see. I mean, I like what you're saying. I mean, you don't see anything better than your own business. Keep plowing it into your own business, right, and your own people, and continue to grow at that direction. So yeah, that's just our model. It's it's different. I was just wondering what your guys' was. So yeah.
Kevin, I think it's a fair point that there are a lot of things to think about diversification, right? And one of the things I think we think about too is how can we also diversify within the business we already have, right? So whether that's through diversification of not just a retail seed business, but also seed production, that's kind of a way of diversifying yourself a little bit, or geographic market that we covered today, right? At one point we covered 4 or 5 counties in Illinois, and now we're on 29, 30 million corn acres in the U.S. So I think there's still opportunity for us out there to continue to maybe pursue a little bit of that diversification strategy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Always interests me when you say like ADM or Bunge or Tyson, and they have their venture funds, and like Tyson was one of the main backers of Beyond Meat, of the fake meat company. And it's interesting that you see them take their, some of their revenue and some of their profits and plow them into the things that, are just ancillary channels. And sometimes those end up becoming big businesses. So yeah, I didn't know if you got.
Yeah, one of the more interesting things we talked about, John talked on earlier, is how you're saying diversify. Most of the people we've had on, it's like, all right, we're going to get into the cattle, we're going to get into the pork. And then we had some people talk about getting into like those roof blankets and getting into all this different stuff. And John mentioned like, oh yeah, we could easily get into soybeans, but I think it's crazy how like I really respect it, how laser focused you guys are on corn. And there's just so much opportunity on corn itself. Why not just
keep doing
focus on corn and be the best at corn seed? And that's kind of what it seems like you guys are doing. And I think that focus is crazy hard, and it's extremely important to be successful, I feel like. And I deal with it every day, I'm getting my hands into new stuff. It's like, man, just stay focused, like just be the best at this one thing. There's so much opportunity in this. So hats off to that. And I think that's really important to look at for tons of businesses. So
no, for sure. Yeah. So what else, buddy?
I think that's all I had. You guys have anything else on your end, or?
Nothing else. Nothing on my end. So.
All right. Well, I sure appreciate you guys taking the time to do this, and I'm sure a lot of people listening will like it as well. So.
Yeah, and our family, Bill, I much appreciate all you've done for us through the years and your guys' support. And heck, I remember coming up there to speak at one of your guys' big your annual events, and where you have all your customers in. Jordan wasn't around yet, he was off of college, but I came back, told my wife, I'm like, wow, that's a serious production you guys put on there. And it was a heck of a good time. So yeah, and I like I said, I owe you guys a lot, and I appreciate it. And you guys opening up your family to our family. And hey, if there's anything we can ever do to help you guys, so we're always here. So I much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all you do.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All righty.
Appreciate it.
I'll see you guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Fred.
All right. Bye.